But Joshua, we do have actual news to discuss. Like we said, we're going to be here throughout the offseason. We're going to have a bunch of great interviews with some of our friends and some former players, coaches across the sport all offseason. But we're still wrapping up news, really like coming out of the national championship game, because we talked about this briefly, but both of the participants in the national championship game need new defensive coordinators. So let's start with the one that left Columbus for State College. Jim Knowles officially announced at Penn State. The salary is crazy. Like, he's going to be making $3.1 million per year, first $3 million coordinator in the country. And this is just such an interesting move, leaving the team that just won the national championship less than a week after winning said title to go to Penn State, the team that they are chasing. This is the team that is chasing Ohio State, that is trying to close the margins and to figure out how to go from being very, very good to elite, how to go from reaching the national semifinals to the national championship game. A team and a program where everyone kind of pushed all their chips in, like Ohio State did last year, like Michigan did 2 years ago, with a bunch of returning players coming back. Drew Aller, Katron Allen, Nicholas Singleton, a bunch of key players on both sides of the ball. And that's where Jim Knowles decides to go. Pennsylvania guy, talked about his ties to dream of really going to Penn State, didn't work out. But he decides to go there. He decides to leave Ohio State, which is built to compete for national championships every year, to go to a program that we've wondered if they would do this, that if they would invest the same resources that the top programs in college football do. And here they go, and they create the first $3 million coordinator. So Joshua, a lot of different angles to attack on this. But let's start with the Penn State impact, like what it means that Penn State was willing to pay this, was willing to go out there and try to poach Jim Knowles.
I mean, that's the part for me that stands out the most, is their willingness to pay $3.1 million a year. And they had kind of hinted to different people in our industry, through media appearances, like, listen, we're getting everything lined up. We're very serious. It's like a far cry from whining about the runway out in State College. But James Franklin wanted them to invest the way that other schools had done it. And I think the university said, we can do that for you because we want to win a title as well. So this stands out to me as more of a symbolic thing. Here's the reality from a football standpoint. I don't think this makes a damn bit of difference. Penn State's defense was never really the issue. Tom Allen didn't leave because he had a bad defense. He left for an opportunity that he probably felt was a bit more of a culture fit, maybe closer to family and the whole deal. But this idea that they needed to overhaul a defense and they had to go out and make the splash higher on the defensive side, I don't know if they needed to pay $3.1 million to do it, right? But they did. So I expect them to be good defensively once again. That was the biggest signal to me. Outside of Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Denai Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, outside of all those guys saying, we're running it back for one more, it was this, all right, well, you know what, Jim Knowles, he's not exactly happy. This is one of our rivals in conference that we've struggled to beat. Like, he's looking around. Let's go get him, and let's make him not only the highest paid coordinator in college football history, but let's blow that number out of the water. Ohio State was ready to pay him $2.75, which would have been the highest paid coordinator in college football. And Penn State said, screw that. We're not even going to make this close.
Right. And it was a sweepstakes, right? So you had Ohio State still in the mix. You had Oklahoma in the mix, and then you had Penn State. And so it is, to me, like the bigger thing of, to your point, like your defense was going to be good no matter what. It's always a strength at Penn State. You always have great athletes and they're able to succeed. It's the statement of saying, we're going to go do this. We're going to go get the coach from our rival. We're going to go get the coach who just played a national championship game. And there's going to be no reason that he's not going to pick us, right? So we are going to spend the most. We are going to offer him the most. We are going to give him control of the defense, whatever he wants, right? I don't think he was announced with a position, right? So I think he can just do coordinating. He can be in any meeting he wants. Like, he doesn't have to worry about different things. And I think that that's the statement. The statement is, this is a place where James Franklin, to your point about the runway, has complained about the resources, right? Like, it's been about facilities, and they're obviously upgrading them and have upgraded some. It's been about NIL and support, right? And obviously, people stepped up. These guys are coming back next year. Nobody left. People didn't hop in the portal. Nicholas Singleton did not test the waters. So the people have responded and they have answered. And certainly coming off of an appearance in the national semifinals, great time to do all of this. But it's about alignment, which is such a buzzword in college football. But like James Franklin has talked about it with his president, his athletic director, Pat Kraft, who's only been there for a couple of years, by the way, and him, and that they have been able to get these types of things done. And to push them through. They prioritize the things in football that you feel like you need to prioritize. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like it's Jim Knowles. He's the best coordinator in the country. He had the #1 defense in the country. Sure, all of that's nice, but it's that you went and got him, not necessarily that it's him. And obviously, once we get closer to the season, like it will matter how he is installing the defense. But for winning the offseason, for like us talking about this right now, and for the fact that this has been in the headlines for, a week now, it's because Penn State was willing to do it.
No doubt. No doubt. It's, again, they've put themselves in that spot where I think people are going to do the national title or bust for Penn State.
They already are. Yeah.
And I do want to caution people. I feel like that is a really miserable way to live a college football season because it makes everything else not matter. But they have done the things that we watched the last 2 national champions do. And so I think that the expectation now with James Franklin, again, I think people try to do this, he's a bad coach thing. And I would push back on that and say he hasn't won the games against teams that he's not supposed to beat, but he typically beats who's supposed to beat.
He does.
Well, now you have the roster. Now you have the resources. You went and got your defensive coordinator. You have the offensive coordinator that you wanted last year. He's running it back. Like, it does feel like it would be time. If they're going to do it, this year feels like the year they should do it.
2 questions for you. 1, does Penn State have the best pair of coordinators in the country?
Wow, that's a really good question. I would wait and see from the standpoint of who does Ohio State go and get as their DC? Because what Chip Kelly did, especially in the postseason, and if they go out and they make a splash with the DC, I think it would be neck and neck for those 2.
Okay, but I mean, like that's what we're talking about here with what Penn State has, because the way that we talked about them going and getting Jim Knowles is the way we talked about them going and getting Andy Kotelnicki last year. This is someone who, the creativity, the offense is Kansas turning them around. And then he stays with Lance Leipold until it's Penn State, until they were able to go get him.
The interesting thing is Jim Knowles and Andy Kotelnicki obviously have history from coaching against each other in the Big 12. Kotelnicki's offenses struggled against Jim Knowles'
right, the only defense. They really
but imagine, like, now you get to have that conversation. Hey, bro, here's the secret sauce. This is why we were so good against you. Like, there's this thing, too, about the better your staff gets, the more you're able to self-scout and you're able to improve from a scheme standpoint, from a practice standpoint, like elevate when you put together a staff that has really, really good coaches like this.
Yeah, I agree. And also you're taking away like one of your biggest weakness, like your kryptonites from your rival and putting them in your staff that you get to learn from and not have to face. So that's part of it as well. The second question I have for you, and we'll come back to Penn State because we want to talk a little bit about some of these way too early top 25s, which Penn State is very high on. Have they fixed the receiver issue though? Right? We talked about all the things that they're running back. Are they going to be able to fix the most glaring weakness, the receiving room?
They brought in a transfer from USC. There was another transfer, I think might have been a G5 guy that they were pretty high on. So maybe. I mean, they had guys.
The spring portal window as well. You still have another opportunity.
The spring portal, I feel like, is one of 2 things: is guys who know they're not going to start at their school, so they're just out, or you're poaching. You're poaching. So if they want to go out there and they want to do what teams are doing that might be a little nefarious, they could probably get a splash in the spring, but I don't know if there's going to be that real top tier talent there. It's going to have to be a combination of the guys that they did identify in the portal are really good, and that makes a difference. And then maybe some guys who we didn't see play this year. Caden Saunders is a guy who I've heard about. local to Columbus. So I know a little bit about him. They had high expectations. Does he take a step? Like, can you get some of that going too? That's going to be my biggest thing, because you can't just throw it to the running backs all game and
Right.
feel like that's going to be your pass game.